At what point do you say, I'm going to architect and design a new path forward? How do you navigate these things?
I mean, you always remember, you just don't lead with it, but you always have it in your back pocket. It's like, I'm still Black. I still know my history. I still know the 50s to the 70s. You know, thank you to the founding fathers for creating the spirit, even though what they did was terrible, but I'm living in their creation. We're living in their creation.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask a Bitcoiner 21 Questions. I'm your host, Saida Gomez. So, full disclosure, before his brutal assassination, I had never heard of Charlie Kirk. May he rest in peace. Throughout the holidays, my social media was filled with posts, commentary, videos, you name it, about Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk, and then Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj caught my attention because she is from Trinidad and Tobago, so we share the same background. And so I actually clicked and engaged and listened and tried to learn. And to me, there are some things that just haven't changed. Most of these discussions are anchored in left versus right, white versus black. So my question is, if the goal of these discussions is actually to improve society, why do we focus on politics and things that divide us? And why don't we speak a little bit more about money, the monetary system, and how it impacts us? So here to help me navigate, break it down, understand, I'm joined by Phillip D. McCombs. He is a fellow Bitcoiner. Hello. Libertarian, and he's based in Cleveland, Ohio. Phillip, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. My pleasure. So, and just to the audience as a reminder, remember, this is a full-length episode. So there will be seed words hidden throughout this podcast episode. The first person to find all 12 words can recover the wallet, and 21,000 sats are yours. So good luck to you. So, Phillip, before we get to this conversation, I am an outsider. I'm not American. I've visited the U.S. plenty of times, but I cannot claim to know the American experience or the Black American experience. So, caveat, keep that in mind. But before we get to it, can you just let me and let everyone know about your Bitcoin origin story and what brought you to Bitcoin?
Yeah, around, 2020, I was in LA. COVID happened. I flew back to be with and around family. It took me off course a little bit. And so I basically
Yeah.
just got to work. I got to work, had to start making money. I own a record label, but it's a hobby for now. It's not profitable yet. So I just got to work. And yeah, I was working as hard as I could and couldn't get over inflation,
Mm.
right? So I knew something was wrong. I took a few days off where I was working at the time and just started studying. I just followed my thoughts and it led me to Max Kaiser. And once he introduced scarcity again for the first time since high school, I knew that we had something here. It, started stacking from there. That was like, yeah, 2020, 2021. I started stacking, saw the technology part first. But now it's more of a human rights thing. So between then and now, there's a lot that I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah, definitely. And shout out to Max Kaiser, Max and Stacy. They are also part of my Bitcoin origin story, and they have helped a lot of people. Well, they've led a lot of people to learning more about Bitcoin and eventually stacking sats. And you mentioned COVID. I think is it 45% of the money supply in the US was printed as a result of COVID. So those people who actually listened are a little better off today than they would be if they hadn't fallen down the Bitcoin rabbit hole.
Absolutely. COVID was so globally coordinated that I have not been the same since. that's really what made me libertarian as well. And they're connected.
So, how are they connected? And how did you get into Bitcoin and learn about the libertarian movement at the same time? Or was it just a coincidence?
Around the same time. So going down the rabbit hole, eventually you will find Ross Ulbricht, and he was in jail at the time, in prison at the time, but he has um, documentaries and home videos, and he's a self-proclaimed libertarian in those early Silk Road videos. And he was working in Bitcoin at the time, so two and two together, I mean, the Libertarian Party got him out of prison. It just makes sense. Um, they're connected. So yeah,
Yeah, and for people who don't know, because I got a few new subscribers actually in previous episodes covering the Bitcoin and crypto ban in Trinidad and Tobago. So not everyone may know who Ross is. Can you let us know, just give us a TLDR on the Silk Road, what happened to him, and eventually how he was pardoned?
yes. So I may botch this a little bit, but maybe not. He he made the first Bitcoin, or one of the first Bitcoin marketplaces where you can buy and sell goods with Bitcoin on the internet. Yeah, probably the first. Yeah. First Bitcoin marketplace on the internet. It bypassed a lot, if not all, systems of the time that you had to go through to make something happen. So it was the first proof of concept for what may be coming down the pipeline now. He's American. Yeah, did what, 10, 11 years? Um, yeah, then Trump, during this presidency, he came to the Libertarian convention to hear us out, and we have his ear now. Um, yeah, and got pardoned through the party. The party is growing, it's growing fast. I did a lot of work here in the area. Yeah, I think that's probably the best I can do without botching it too much. But Silk
Yeah.
Road was the name of it. Yeah.
So, I didn't know that Trump went to a libertarian conference. Obviously, I knew that he went to the Bitcoin conference because I'm like most of my social media is about Bitcoin, hence me not knowing too much about Charlie Kirk, for example. But I didn't know that Trump went to the libertarian conference.
Yep. Um, and we had Free Ross was our main task for him if he wanted our vote. So we had the Free Ross signs, we had the Free Ross shirts at our meetups. Meetups are growing too everywhere. I helped start the Cleveland Bitcoin Club.
Good for you.
That's this Friday. Have some people from Michigan, which is the state above us, coming down. Yeah, so Trump uh Trump went to the Libertarian Convention and the Bitcoin conference same year. He had some good advice, clearly.
So naturally, this is where it could get awkward. And again, I don't know the best way to like, I guess round the edges of these questions. So I'm just
Yeah.
gonna go straight for it. So, as a Black man in the U.S., speaking about the fact that you organized on the ground, you mobilized, you basically highly influenced your local libertarian groups in voting for Trump. Basically, how does that come across on the ground? Is what I see on social media, does it actually reflect reality in terms of these race dynamics and black versus white? Or is it, or, are people, I guess, real in real life?
I mean, the history of the country is what it is, and it still does prevail, but I am in the North, and this is where slaves ran too, so I don't think it's going to be as bad in the northern parts. I'm in the Midwest, but We have Underground Railroad history here. I think that'll help re-educate. Um, but it comes down to how you're raised as
Hmm.
well, and this could be a whole other episode. But I'm Christian, and I'm around Christians, and we're taught. I mean, the Bible teaches it really to you're not supposed to see color. So in my realm, I mean, I've experienced racism, but in
Hmm.
my realm, um, we don't subscribe to that. It's everything's teamwork. It's getting harder because people do know who I am now, and now it seems they're trying to slow me down through little ways, but good luck. I just have to adjust my approach. That's why I have people from different states coming in now for reinforcements.
Oh,
Uh,
reinforcements. Are we talking like kinetic hot, conflicts, or just,
no,
social
just
sabotage?
so not Sabbath, just social. Um, they're helping get what I'm trying to say across.
Okay.
Um, Mises Caucus, Libertarian Party. It's not only Bitcoin because, I'm not rich and a good portion of Bitcoiners are just in for the number go up. And I think I'm representing a whole different section of Bitcoiners. It's survival go up. It's
Mm.
a whole different lens, right? We're very entitled here. And while there's also parts of the globe that don't even have electricity, and this is a technology that sits on top of electricity and the internet. So I don't like bragging too much. I stack sats, but I'd love to work with the Human Rights Foundation.
Oh, wow.
I'd love to, um, because this is such a survival technology mechanism, freedom tech, as they say. Uh, I'd love to help get electricity and internet. And you don't need it, you can do it through, but I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's not just about number go up, and you can ascribe that to race, you know, but it comes down to humanity. Like, do you want people to survive, or are you willing to step on people to gain? It's greed versus humility. Um, but there's always going to be a race aspect. It's just subtle now.
Yeah. Race is one of those things that are in my personal opinion and lived experience, so this is highly subjective. It's one of those it's a very difficult thing to find consistency in. So, for example, okay, negative experiences being a Black woman. In the US, in Chicago, I was followed in a store, and in Normandy, France, I was followed in a store. You know what I mean? Or, yeah. So, outside of that, in other regions of the world, I've traveled to a lot of different countries. Some people really don't care. Some people, funnily enough, will come to me and say, "You're American. How come you guys do this?" And I'm like, "No, I'm actually from Canada. I'm not American." So people, I feel like your appearance, the way you present in the world, is something that people use to project whatever, positive, negative experiences they've had, whatever opinions they've had, whatever. They just kind of project it on you and just vomit whatever they have on their mind on you.
Well, you have a few good points there. I'm gonna pull at. I mean, as men, before anything else, we have to protect women and children, right? We have to do that first before even talking about number go up. My colleague, um, my main artist actually had to remind me of that. I'm trying to get my business to thrive, and I'm talking about Bitcoin all the time, but he had to remind me of his sickness. So I'm sorry that happened.
Oh, I
You know,
don't. Yeah, I really didn't care. Actually,
we'll
in
we'll
Chicago,
he'll
I turned around and I looked at the woman and I was like, "Are you actually following me? Like, like, is this a joke?" And she was so surprised by my reaction that she was embarrassed and she like backed off. It was kind of funny, but go ahead.
it's not though. That might be a defense mechanism. We laugh things off, but yeah, we expanded last year, to a couple states. We're going to do more occupying this year, through our music business, but it all ties. Everything ties in together. My my artist, reminded me to protect the innocent, and then I'm teaching him about liberty, about liberty and Bitcoin. So um, it's a nice group, and we are intimidating because we do bring up these types of topics, and it's coming to a head where you can't really ignore them anymore. We need to advance. Not all of us can, you know, just focus on the money. Like
Mm,
we need to bring people to the table. Owners, like, you got to come to the table. You don't have to say yes, but have the respect to sit down with us. And that's what we're doing this year, for sure. In the name of liberty, and then in Jesus' name, all that. Um, yeah, it's gonna be good though. It's gonna be great. Might be uncomfortable. It probably will be, but the end result is thrive. Thrive, go up.
Thrive, go up. So, what does it look like to have a discussion about Bitcoin and about the impact the monetary system and money printing has on society versus like conservative versus, I guess, liberal or Democrat?
It's a great question. The Cleveland Bitcoin Club is kind of in two sections now, and I guess I'm opening up another side of things. We meet socially and drink and stuff like that,
Hmm.
but there's another side of it where we meet, in libraries. It's more formal, and we talk about real issues. So, it's not easy. Um, but can you ask that a question again? Because I had something for it too.
Yeah, what it's like to shift the focus of discussion towards monetary policy and money printing versus political ideology, so left versus right.
So I'm going to be teaching about self and cold storage, the differences between hot and cold, and the importance, the significant importance of that. Um, I will teach for anyone that's willing to listen. So this is the way I'm going about it. I spent the last 4 years, reaching out, gathering, uh, educating. We had parties and things like that. Um, but lately, it's just been stacking myself, just getting the USD or the dollar of your country and converting it for yourself, for your family, putting it in cold storage, wherever that may be. Like, speaking of Canada, I'm a fan of open dimes. A lot of people
Yeah,
aren't.
yeah, yeah.
It's a risk, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. It's my favorite cold storage device. I tested a few out, and I put at least 1 million sats on each, and then I'll hide that one, get a new one. They come in 3 packs, put at least 1 million sats. And the only way to get that is through me. You can't go through the company, can't go through, it's on this USB device. And so, yeah, I will continue to vouch for self and cold storage and just accumulate this work. work and then just put a portion of that into um, cold storage. Very important. Out of the hands of anyone else. If no one wants to listen, do it for yourself. So whoever's listening, if your meetup's not cool or it's not lit or you don't even have one, try to start it, of course. But at the end of the day, go to work and you get that check, put a percentage away every time and just compound for yourself because there are people that just don't care. They don't care or just want to, just about greed. So it's, it's going to get better though. It's all good. I think, yeah, go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead. I'll ask you after.
Think when, you know, now I have people from different states coming in, um, it'll show it's another level of my influence, my seriousness. Because her name's Amber, forgot her last name, but the Bitcoin Michigan Trade Council, they'll be coming down, working on parallel economy between trade between Ohio and our neighbor states. So a lot of Cleveland Bitcoiners have goods and services. Um, yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's getting more serious because we pay taxes and whatnot. We want to do it the right way.
Yeah. Fold the
Uh,
right way, do everything the right way.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it looks like the banks are gonna have to adjust. We don't need them anymore. We're gonna pay our taxes, but we're not beholden to banks. We're beholden to taxation. So I think that's really cool.
So it sounds like then, I suppose my algorithms exposed me to a certain narrative. On X as well, I noticed since Elon took over, I get a lot more sort of race baiting posts show up in my feed. And so it sounds like on the ground, you're just focused on the mission, and that's it. Educating people, collaborating with Bitcoiners from other states. Like it's not about left versus right. And I suppose so. Tell me if this is true. My understanding is that um, maybe for the most part, people who are Bitcoiners tend to be more conservative from a fiscal or monetary perspective. Is that true?
I'll be honest, they're the only ones that are outside. I think they're more passionate about it. Like,
Hmm.
I think the more left leaning are just working hard and stacking. They're not coming to the meetups to hang out. I will say though, the group that we've amassed are more conservative. Um, as far as traditions and morals and values though, I think everyone's becoming fiscally conservative because we have to.
Yeah, a bad economy will do that to you, right? All of a sudden, you're like, we're not going to the club. We're going to stay home.
Getting to that point now. That's why I'm part of the Libertarian Party though, because we're in the middle. We take things from both sides. So you can't really get us with the race thing because we're standing firm on the party. We're dedicated to the party. And now we have influence. Like I'm a couple degrees away from the president, really one, right? The Angela McCardle is the former chair of the Libertarian Party who led the charge to get Ross free, who is pictured with the president, who has a president on a phone number basis. And her and I talk not all the time, but we talk. So I'm 1 degree away now. And then Amber, who is the executive director of the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, this is her right hand. So yeah, we're right there now. We're right there, and the party is growing. I wrote the Constitution for the Summit County Libertarian Party. For a year, we held events. Um, I'll probably run as a libertarian in the future, 15 years from now. Um, so we're a thorn in the left and right. There should always be odd numbers. It's like we break the mold. It gives people a different. Um, it's the thing too that's pretty cool. We're really a global party as to where the Democrats, you have different names for Democrats in different countries. You have different names for Republicans in different countries. But the Libertarian Party is a Libertarian Party everywhere. And the international organization we're building is growing too. So it's all about, for me, I don't like mandates. Why is another adult giving me a mandate? It's just weird. It's think about it fundamentally.
Oh, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not a fan of like adhering to any political party. But I mean, in terms of self-sovereignty and agency, I'm always like that. Like, why? And if I bring it back to like my jump off point about race, for me, it's like if I subscribe to whatever notion of race that someone else has, I'm automatically subjecting myself to their opinions. You know what I mean? Like I'm sort of handing away part of my power. And so I live in a bubble, clearly. I live under a rock. I didn't know that Charlie Kirk existed until a few weeks ago. So that I acknowledge, but I'm with you 100%. I don't think that, my destiny should be um determined by, outside forces. Well, not forces, outside people. God is responsible for my destiny, but I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to wait for someone to say, okay, you're allowed to do this or you're not allowed to do that. That's not my personality.
Now, being American though, something in the spirit of the land here with our founding fathers, like I'm interested to know the founding of each country. But our story is interesting. We uh, 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 King George from across the pond was making decisions that people here didn't like. We had to stand up to the the power of the time, and that spirit just it doesn't leave. Like we're born to fight, we're born to rebel. We tyranny is just like of any kind. It just doesn't sit well, and we're armed to the teeth, so our government couldn't if they wanted to. It's like I'm sure you can feel it, but that spirit is contagious. We hope it is, because tyranny creeps. There's a totalitarian tiptoe, there's a communist creep, and we reject that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Does how do I say this? Does that spirit reflect when it comes to sort of international policy or foreign policy, or is that something that's really contained, domestically in the U.S.?
Um, I'm still working on my position on foreign policy. Like I have a secretary who's really helping me with that. That's the one thing I don't have formulated yet. So shout
Mm.
out to my secretary. Most of my positions that are clear are domestic. I'm still young, and
Oh,
I want to study a little more before I dip into that. I know why you're asking, but I don't have
really? Why am I asking? I mean, the timing of there's something hot every day, I feel. Why am I asking?
Yeah, it's like we're doing what someone else did to us. You know, the difference is, and I need more information, but so
Mm.
we rebelled against King George and the Redcoats and formed our country because someone somewhere else was making calls for us. And it's like we're making calls for another country now as of Saturday. It's like, but do those people? It seems like the people in Venezuela are split. We'll know in due time. Some are happy that Maduro's out. Some aren't. Um, but we have one of the best government, um, in my eyes, structures. You can't stay long. You only get 2 terms. You can't stay in power. Like our politicians get checked for the most part. This guy Trump is something else, but a lot of, tell me if I'm wrong. Like a lot of countries can't check their leaders either because they're not armed. Mostly that's why, just to be honest. Like most citizens aren't armed. Somehow they got laws in that country to have their citizens not be armed, and they slipped it in there. And now, how easy would it be for global takeover if every leader of 193 countries started a group chat and said, hey, let's take over our citizens and start a world government? That would work in a lot of places because the citizens aren't or can't be armed, but it'll never work here because we have something in I forgot which document it is, one of our founding documents, like if and when our government overreaches too much, we're obliged to fight it.
Mhm.
I just don't know the founding documents of other countries enough, and I'm looking forward to speaking with other, you know, countrymen of their countries just to know the differences and similarities in our founding documents and how we can help
Yeah.
tyranny in other places too.
You
Like these.
should. So, by comparison, Switzerland is a lot smaller than the US in terms of land mass, in terms of population. There's no doubt. And at the same time, you should check the history of Switzerland in terms of, people who fight and the Confederation, why it came together, the fight against, I think it was the Habsburgs of Austria who wanted, I think, who wanted to dominate, the myth and the legend of William Tell. Switzerland is a country that has a lot of guns per capita. I actually went to a gun show in December, my first gun show, because before I moved here, I was dead set against guns. I think that you would call me socially liberal and fiscally and monetarily very conservative. I don't fit in a box. And so I was dead set against guns. Socially, they're bad, they're this, they're that. And then a friend here, who actually is a gun instructor, invited me to the shooting range because there are shooting ranges everywhere. There are billboards for military service to say, like, here are the opening hours of the shooting range. He invited me and he was like, do it and then tell me what your opinion is. And so I can only speak to my experience here. One thing that stood out to me is that they had to verify that I was a Swiss citizen, because if I wasn't allowed to use Swiss ammunition. I had to use a different type of ammunition. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is. And the safety protocols that you have to follow before you actually shoot, the fact that the shooting range had people of literally all ages, men, women, there was an older guy. He must have been in his like mid to late 70s, young kids. I think you can start shooting when you're 16 or something. So like teenagers, all ages and stuff. And I was surprised at the sporting aspect of it and the fact that people were like, they were friends, they'd go for drinks, they'd shoot. And then we went to a gun show and it was the same deal. I took so many pictures of guns because I never in a million years thought that I would be exposed to this. But you should look into Switzerland, its history, its political structure as well, because here it's half direct democracy, and so it is pretty much decentralized.
It's good. Good to hear. It's, a lot of countries just have a guy or gal that just won't give up, just won't hear their people out and just accumulate for themselves. And that's a problem. And we'll always be here to answer the call, if a country needs help. But um, yeah, I'll definitely look that up for sure. For
So
sure.
do you see, I guess, libertarianism and Bitcoin as sort of like the future, so that, there's no longer this right versus left, black versus white, immigrant versus whatever divide. There's like a clear line of focus through the libertarian movement.
Yeah, we have a 10-year plan to be at parity with the left and the right. Um, we did very good this past election, won over 50% of our races locally. To answer your question, absolutely, it's a long-term thing. We're not going to win the big races right now. We have a great chair and a great LNC where throughout the country we're winning small places, small races and positions, small jurisdictions, and that's how it starts. It's just going to spread. So it'll be more like authoritarian versus liberty is how I see it.
Mm.
You know, the culture is definitely changing. Sovereignty is definitely the word. Um, yeah, it's absolutely the future. Race is always going to be a thing, though. But the party's founding 1971, the same year some things happened with banks. It's not a coincidence because there are factions in the party, but we're starting to get over that infighting. And yeah, I would definitely check out our chairs page. His name's Steven. Yeah, check out the Libertarian National Committee. Follow the Libertarian Party just to um, see how different we speak in comparison. Like we're not theater. We're not part of the theater. We're not part of the stage. Like we're real people on the ground. Um, I, Part of the issue is the media. You know, like this is good because it's gonna reach people that it wouldn't. Yeah, this is a good start to the year. This is the type of stuff that needs to happen. Thanks for letting me on. Because I
Yeah, my
know,
pleasure.
appreciate it very much. I know that the American spirit is something else. It's a lot. I embody it. Um, but a lot of people that look like me don't don't understand, or don't care about the history of the country. And the founding fathers are European, you know? It's like, how can you act a certain way toward a certain people, knowing that the freedom we have is because of Europeans? Granted, how they got it, brutal.
That okay, so we may lead with that. That I think will spark a lot of debate and pushback. So you're saying that because the founding fathers um were European, then I guess any sort of criticisms or critiques towards people of European descent is unwarranted?
No, just know your history. That's all
Mm.
I'm saying. If you don't know that in the country you live, you retake the history class. Like what they did was terrible, but it's what's also what happened. All I'm saying is know
Mm.
your history, and that fighting spirit. While we're ahead and we're armed to the teeth, and no government will over like no government will this is the people's country, and
Yeah.
it just is what it is. Granted, we have a lot more black and diverse people in power now. It is changing a lot and quick. A lot of, but the spirit remains the same. The spirit has no color. Um, but the fact is they were European. A lot of our leaders now are not, but the spirit remains the same. Don't let
Mm.
tyranny in. If the government gets too big and powerful, we fight them. That remains. And yeah, it should spark some debate. That's what we want, not fights. We just want debate. I tried to start an international debate club that'll be back out eventually. But just the culture, like clubbing is cool and all, but you're gonna find me in a museum, a library, a symphony or orchestra, nice architecture. I'm gonna You gotta change the culture here. Um, that sloppiness, like it's a renaissance.
Mm.
This through the art. That's what I do. I protect the artist through music. Uh, but the culture has to change. Um, yeah, and on the weekend, it's like, let's go to the debate club. It's Friday. Everyone just got off work. There's two intellectual thinkers. There's two up and coming young philosophers that want to debate, and that's where we hang out.
Oh, that's pretty dope. I like that. I'm a nerd. I like that kind of stuff. I like debates. You know what you when you're talking about knowing your history and the founding fathers, you reminded me of something I read in the epilogue of War and Peace, where Tolstoy is going, at least the version I read, sorry. Tolstoy is talking about causation, like what is the cause of something, and basically how far back in history do you go? Because it's almost infinite, not infinite, since the dawn of man. You can always go back and look for another cause. And so when you said that, it made me think of that, and the loop just, started again in my brain, because it's like, at what point do you move on, so to speak, from history? At what point do you say, I'm going to architect and design a new path forward? How do you how do you navigate these things?
I mean, you always remember, um, you just don't lead with it, but you always have it in your back pocket.
Mm.
It's like, I'm still black. I still know my history. I still know the 50s to the 70s. You know, thank you to the founding fathers for creating the spirit, even though what they did was terrible, but I'm living in their creation. We're living in their creation. And then the civil rights, like we have a whole federal civil rights section in our government. So it's like I'm just not gonna lead with it because like one of your questions or in the summary was let's make this economic.
Yeah.
And when people if we're like tried to be held down, that's where we can invoke the civil rights movement because you're trying to do exactly what we already got over. So it's really evil. We're trying to build, you and I. If someone wants to stop us, we invoke, now we got to have that fight just so we can get back to economics. So
Mm.
never forget, but don't lead with it. Like I'm not a victim. I have a business. I have a staff. We need funding. But if you want to fight about why I don't deserve it because of how I look, we can do that. I'll win.
Mm.
I'll win. You took some time from our progress. You made me grow more gray hairs, but
Yeah.
we had to have a history lesson just so people like you and I can advanced still.
Mm,
Never
interesting.
forget. Never forget. But never forget either. You can't forget the civil rights movement, but you also can't forget the founding. You just it I need to get my IQ score. It's like we can't keep doing this participation trophy stuff. Some people are smarter than others. Some people are stronger than others. And there's a culture here now where everyone gets the same reward, even though some do more, produce more. That's the issue that's finally being addressed. It's like the people that are doing. I've had this done to me. People that do better strive for more. There's so many that want to keep the status quo that they look at a person like me saying, "Dude, slow down. You're making us look bad." I'm over it.
That happens in all cultures and across all languages. That's not just in the US. Trust and believe. I've had colleagues who were the same. Don't work too quickly. There isn't a lot of work. We like it happens across all cultures.
That's my biggest pet peeve right now, and why I run a company. Because in it, I'm not beholden to anything. I make the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And your customers end up being the final boss of your company. And so eventually, instead of, the trade-offs that you face with colleagues, it'll be what your customers want. What is the voice of your customer? How do you find the delicate balance between what sits with your morals and values and what they are asking for?
Yes, absolutely. I work in the entertainment industry, which is the communication sector of the stock market. It's a communication sector, the entertainment industry, the music business. And my positioning is um, we have the music for the Bitcoin economy. Every Bitcoin event, we will provide the live entertainment. You can get an artist that's already huge but doesn't care or know about Bitcoin. But then you call me really the only record label in Bitcoin, built on Bitcoin. So since we're building a parallel economy, how many economies are there now? Hundreds? That's our tour. We tour from meetup to meetup, conference to conference, providing entertainment for your obviously we'll do the weddings and stuff like that, but we'd rather do it for Bitcoiners, buy in for Bitcoiners. And then the fiat greedy people come, they get second. They don't get dibs. Bitcoiners get dibs on these up and coming musicians that I'm stewarding. So
So we're going to close out soon. And I have this question just came to me as you were speaking. How do you think dynamics, so this sort of like this polarization that we see in the US, how do you think that would be different today if the US were operating on a sound money standard?
I think the contracts would be simplified, one page. We'd get back to trade and bargain.
Mm.
Um, because so say I have something you want, you have something I want, and we could just trade right now. But the fact that I don't have a dollar, we don't trade. That's so weird. So say, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Take the dollar out, we could just trade. Put the dollar in, it's like we can't even trade now because I don't have the medium. So I think that type of can't think of the word, red tape, bureaucracy would just be non-existent.
A fiat. Do you think there'd be more social cohesion?
Absolutely. Because I would say it like this, since I guess I'm gonna govern eventually. Write down your
You're
wants.
very sure of yourself. That's a good sign.
There's not many of us. There's not many of us left. Thank you though. Well, cause I'm just preparing myself to. I don't want to, but I'll be ready to.
Mm.
Difference. Um, where was I going?
I asked if there'd be
Okay.
more social cohesion.
Absolutely, because I would say just write down your wants and needs, everyone, and then I know who has these for you. I connect you and go about your day. It's like half the time there's no money involved. It's goods and services. So you
Yeah.
can even take Bitcoin out of it. This is a human thing. What are your wants and needs? What's your financial or what's your emotional profile? This is more about spirit. What are your wants and needs right now? Write them down. I write mine down. We trade them. That's only paper involved, or not even email. All right, I can personally do 1, 3, and 5. I know someone who can do 2, 5, and 7, and they'll do it just because they can. That's ideal. Some may want money. You see the levels though, like
Hmm. Yeah, you're removing this centralized money printer and the Cantillon effect. So assets won't necessarily go up. Someone has land, someone needs to build a home, like you can find an arrangement without thinking that, your house or your land has to become your savings technology, so to speak.
all right, I want I want land, you have the land, and you may want like an Xbox. Just here's the Xbox, here's the land, let's get to work. All this paperwork and stuff is it seems is meant to just slow down, disencourage the person from even engaging in the trade.
Yeah.
Sick. So a lot more cohesion because the banks will not be included,
Yeah.
so we get Bitcoiners in position and then take it from there, really.
Yeah.
Last thing, at the Bitcoin conference that Trump went to, um, David Bailey handed him a Cassius coin with 1 Bitcoin on it. That's physical. I think people don't talk about this enough. One of our governmental structures, FinCEN, stopped the circulation of these coins. And I'll say here, if I get in position, we're gonna bring those back. Physical bearer instruments. There's a million sats on this. Here, we can verify it on the computer. So you load it up on an open dime, and you can just pass it around. Last thing, say I have 4 open dimes, and it sounds like you know what they are.
Yeah, of course. I've never used one, but I'm familiar with CoinKite's products. Yeah.
So 1/4 of a dollar is a quarter, 25 cents. 1/4 of a Bitcoin is what? How many sats?
100 million divided by 4, so 25 million.
So load that up on a bunch of open dimes. It's the new quarter. So load 10 million sats on a bunch of open dimes. It's the new dime. Load 1 million on an open. That's the new penny. You load it, you seal it, and you pass it around. It can be verified through a tap, maybe. can be verified through I have some schematic designs for how it could be, but same shape, but it's loaded with Bitcoin on it, and you pass it around just like anything else. But that's where I really got shut down. I started talking about that, freaked people out.
Because it's a bearer instrument. So what do you think of cashew as a bearer instrument for like smaller amounts of sats?
It's too confusing for the general public. Cali,
Cashew, really?
for me, I mean, I'll speak for
Okay.
myself. Like, the technical jargon is so, I don't know. It's great. I see it, but I know why what I'm saying doesn't get traction. It's physical, and I can make it
Yeah.
easier. I can make it easy for a senior citizen. What the senior citizen and cashew are not going to.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
But I say, Mom, tap this with the back of your phone. I loaded it up with 1,000,000 sats. She knows how to do that. Senior citizens know how to tap to pay. So tap to verify there's 100 million loaded up on this, or 100, you know what I'm saying? But when I say it like quarter, tenth, you know, a quarter of a dollar is a quarter. A quarter of a Bitcoin is 25 million sats loaded up. This is a new quarter. No matter what, it's a quarter. No matter what the price is in your country, it's still a quarter Bitcoin. That's going to freak people out. And I'm going to implement that in gaming as well. I'm going to bring that to Vegas, put it in chips. So it's open source. I put it out there now, get it done before I do. It's a real game changer.
Well, I'd love to know how it works out. You'll be back to give us the update on the Open Dime Bearer Instrument initiative.
I like that. I can run with that.
Nice. So, Philip, remind people where they can find you.
Absolutely on anything really. Instagram, X, PDM on Earth. PDM on Earth. Pretty much everything. You'll find a link tree and see me everywhere on Twitch. We'll do some live streaming, and yeah, thanks for having me. This was really fun. Great way to start the year.
My pleasure.